The atmosphere in the room shifted as the CEO, with a playful glint in his eye, gestured towards the janitor's bashful teenage daughter, declaring, "If you can fix this engine, I'll grant you a scholarship." Laughter erupted, filling the space with a mix of surprise and amusement. They anticipated her to lose her composure. Instead, she pushed up her sleeves and stepped ahead. The events that followed rendered every engineer utterly speechless. Yet, concealed beneath the grime and circuitry lay a long-buried family secret, poised to upheave the entire organization and reveal a truth that no one was prepared to face. She was extraordinary. She was relentless. Before we dive in, please give this video a thumbs up and let us know your location in the comments. Your support enables us to share more impactful narratives. Let us commence. The engine room thrummed with an electric tension. Within the corporate headquarters of Stratton Dynamics, a formidable automotive tech giant in Detroit, the ambience resembled a press event rather than a board meeting. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of oil, ambition, and a hint of arrogance. Professionals in polished attire exchanged hushed chuckles, stifling their amusement. At the heart of the scene loomed a 12-cylinder prototype engine, a marvel that had perplexed the entire research division. Their latest endeavor was a groundbreaking innovation, poised to revolutionize the industry with its multi-million-dollar potential. Yet it had abruptly faltered. The diagnostics yielded no findings. No one was able to get it going. CEO Marshall Greystone, a tall figure with slick silver hair and a voice that resonated in every corner, stood with arms crossed, surveying the circle of staff with unmistakable disappointment. He cast a fleeting look at the janitor, Henry Whitaker, who was quietly mopping the floor in the corner. Henry cast his gaze downward, attempting to evade scrutiny, yet that action only ignited a reaction in the CEO. With a self-satisfied grin, Marshall faced the room. "Perhaps we ought to consult Henry's daughter," he suggested, gesturing towards a teenage girl by the exit, clutching a well-used backpack. Alara Whitaker was her name. She arrived to see her father after school, her bag filled with textbooks, engine, diagrams, and a tattered notebook held together with tape. She blinked, her mind racing to process what she thought she had just heard. Marshall let out a soft laugh. "Proceed, young one. If you manage to resolve this, I may consider supporting your college expenses." All burst into laughter. Yet Alara remained silent. She gazed at her father. Henry attempted to move his head just a bit, yet she advanced closer. Her eyes held a serene composure, yet a subtle tremor laced her voice as she inquired, "Can I touch it?" "Proceed," Marshall grinned slyly. "Feel free to proceed." All phones were unavailable. A few of the engineers started to document the scene, anticipating a moment of awkwardness they could later recount over drinks. As Alara approached the engine, an unusual occurrence unfolded. Her hands ceased their trembling. She let her backpack fall to the floor, producing a gentle thud. She then opened it and retrieved her notebook. She turned to a page brimming with intricate diagrams and annotations that caused even some of the engineers to pause in bewilderment. "Where did she acquire that?" one murmured. "That's the identical design we created 6 months back," another whispered. She examined the engine intently for a full minute. She immediately set about her tasks. Her fingers danced across the surface as if they were well versed in this routine, each movement fluid and practiced. She carefully loosened a casing, removed a panel, inspected a small, overlooked capacitor, nestled deep within the control housing, and replaced it with a component from her own collection. "She transports elements," someone whispered. "That is not merely the daughter of a janitor," another remarked, their gaze sharpening. Alara took a step back. "Give it a go now," she murmured softly. The lead technician, a hint of a smirk lingering on his lips, pressed the ignition button. This engine sprang to life with precision, grace, and perfection. The atmosphere grew still. Marshall's face went white, yet no one seemed to see Alara's hands trembling once more, this time from a source far more profound than mere anxiety. The hidden truth she had long concealed was surfacing quickly, and soon there would be no escaping its revelation. The room was enveloped in a heavy silence, as if a wave had crashed down, leaving no sound in its wake. The engine's hum reverberated against the frigid steel walls, and silence reigned supreme among the onlookers. For a full 10 seconds, the flawless hum of Stratton Dynamics' most advanced power unit, after weeks of setbacks, enveloped the space in a palpable sense of disbelief. Alara took a step back, using the sleeve of her hoodie to clean the grease from her fingers. Her hands trembled slightly, but it wasn't due to anxiety. She had just unlocked a secret she had spent her entire life concealing. Marshall Greystone. The CEO fixed his gaze on the engine, his jaw set with such intensity that the muscles in his temples throbbed. He averted his gaze from Alara. Not just yet. He was attempting to make sense of the recent events. The girl he had ridiculed had just accomplished what his top engineers could not, and she had done it in less than 2 minutes. A gentle applause began in the rear, emanating from a young technician with tears glistening in his eyes. Then another came, but it was not the sound of joyous acclaim. It was a blend of wonder, uncertainty, and trepidation all intertwined. Marshall lifted a hand, halting the applause. "May I ask who you are?" he inquired, his tone tinged with carefulness now. Alara paused before responding. She gazed at her father. Henry, who remained motionless, mop clutched tightly, his eyes wide with a mix of fear and an underlying pain. She cast a glance back at the CEO. "I'm simply a person who has a passion for engines," she remarked. A handful of engineers moved to the forefront, keen to share their thoughts. A woman named Dana inquired, "That design in your notebook, how did you come by it?" "That was a private model." Alara paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. Her voice lowered. "I created it." Nervous laughter erupted once more, uneven and tinged with a hint of desperation. "Are you really asking us to accept that you managed to reverse engineer her prototype that had a development cost of $4 million? Another individual inquired. "I didn't reverse engineer it," Alara said, flipping open her notebook once more to reveal another page. "I created it. This option is superior." Marshall's face flushed with color. He seized the notebook and leafed through. The pages. Equations, electrical schematics, fluid dynamics models. Countless pages of detailed original engineering work, meticulously annotated in blue ink with dates stretching back 3 years. "You created this engine at the age of 13. He inquired, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never claimed to have designed that engine," Alara clarified. "I mentioned that I created my own design. It was a reproduction of yours." A sudden intake of breath echoed across the room. Henry moved closer, resting a hand gently on his daughter's shoulder. "We ought to leave," he murmured. "No," Marshall replied with a cutting tone. "You are not going anywhere." Alara met his gaze directly. "Are you holding us here?" Marshall took a step back, grasping the significance of the moment. His pride clashed with his intuition. "Certainly not. But it's essential that we have a conversation." Henry's voice quivered. "It's important that you pay attention." Marshall stood still. "Long ago," Henry started, "there was a remarkable woman who toiled here, a true genius. She was the mother of Alara, my wife. Maren Whitaker was her name." Marshall's eyes grew large with surprise. "The initial version of this engine was crafted by her, long before your team claimed it as their own," Henry remarked, "and upon discovering they were appropriating her efforts, she sought to bring their actions to light. In the following week, she vanished due to a mishap in the laboratory. However, I always found that tale hard to accept. I seized the last remnant of her, our daughter, and fled." The engine's hum persisted, yet the rest of the room lay in complete stillness. The silence in that room was so profound that even the slightest sound would have resonated like a clap of thunder. Each breath felt weighty in the atmosphere, each heartbeat resonating loudly. Alara stood next to her father, her hands clenched tightly into fists. Her voice remained steady, her eyes unwavering, yet within her chest a tempest brewed, a tumult of anger, fear, and deep-seated sorrow that had at last broken free from its confines. Marshall Greystone gazed in disbelief, as though he had encountered a spectre. It had been nearly 15 years since anyone had uttered the name Maren Whitaker, not due to being overlooked, but because everyone had been instructed to let go of the memory. The narrative was locked away. The documents were kept under wraps. The incident had been dismissed. The remains were never found. What troubled Marshall the most was not merely the fact that Alara's mother had previously been employed at Stratton Dynamics. She stood out among them all, more intelligent, quicker, and undeniably formidable. Donna, the engineer, moved nearer to Alara and whispered softly, "Are you her daughter?" Alara gave a single nod. A soft murmur emerged from the shadows. "She lingers in my memory. She led one of my initial training seminars. She could envision propulsion systems in her mind, as if she were composing a symphony." Marshall's hold on the notebook grew firmer. His voice came back, tinged with skepticism and a deeper, more acrid emotion. "What brings you back at this moment? What is the purpose of revealing this in this context?" Alara moved ahead. "I had no intention of doing so. I had no desire to be present in this moment. You turned it into a punchline. I took it upon myself to resolve an issue that your engineers were unable to address, and I succeeded. Yet, as I find myself in this moment, I refuse to turn my back on the truth once more." Henry's hand rested on her shoulder, yet Alara softly brushed it away. She reflected, "I once believed that silence was a shield for others, but in truth it was silence that allowed her to perish. And if there is even a single soul in this room who recalls her, who has pondered the truth of what transpired, then I must ensure they hear it." A seasoned engineer named Leonard, his beard touched with grey and his eyes gleaming with wisdom, gradually lifted his hand. "I witnessed it unfold right before my eyes. I witnessed the files being retrieved. I observed her research being redirected." I remained silent. "You weren't the only one," Henry remarked with a cutting edge. "The labs have been cleaned." The murmurs reached my ears. I observed the sealed chambers, the technicians who became frantic at the mere mention of her name. They laid her to rest, yet her thoughts remained unconfined. Her blood was not buried. This was not buried. He gestured in Alara's direction. Marshall's face contorted as the walls surrounding him started to fracture. Not the tangible ones, but the facade of control he had meticulously built over the years. "Do you believe this alters anything?" He broke. "Do you believe that having a name and a handful of blueprints truly defines your significance?" Alara smiled, yet it was not the smile of a child yearning for validation. It was the serene expression of an individual who understood their victory was already secured. "Do you understand what truly defines a person's significance?" she inquired. "The reality. At this moment, everyone gathered here is aware of it. Even you." This time, the silence that ensued carried a distinct weight, neither surprised nor uncomfortable. The stillness heralded a new beginning. In a swift motion, Dana removed her Stratton badge and let it fall to the ground. Leonard trailed behind. Next, yet another, and yet another. Marshall's gaze flickered anxiously, searching for a semblance of control once more. "This company no longer belongs to you," Henry stated. "It truly never was." Marshall's laughter was tinged with bitterness, yet it resonated emptily. "Do you believe they will trust you? Do you believe any of this will resonate?" Alara unlocked her phone and began recording, capturing the entire scene from the instant Marshall had ridiculed her. Sound, visual content, revelation. "It has already happened," she murmured. The clip spread like wildfire before dawn broke the following day. It began as a faint murmur on a community tech forum, then surged across every platform like a relentless tide crashing through metal. Alara's voice, tranquil and unwavering, echoed with countless souls. Her face, a striking blend of anguish and strength, illuminated screens in residences, coffee shops, workplaces, and campuses. Individuals revisited the instant she proclaimed the significance of truth. The moment Marshall Greystone was exposed played out once more. The silence that ensued was played back once more, and they paid attention. By midday, Stratton Dynamics had captured attention across the nation, not for a fresh defense agreement, not suitable for a rocket launch. However, it serves as a concealment. The world was suddenly captivated by the enigma of Maren Whitaker, questioning why her name had remained in the shadows until this moment. A digital force sifted through archives, revealing ancient patent filings bearing her initials, partially obscured memos, and enigmatic project terminations. Amidst the chaos, there stood Alara, unwavering. She has evolved beyond merely being. A girl with a violin, not merely a silhouette anymore, she had transformed into the Tempest. Within the headquarters, turmoil swirled like a malfunctioning engine. Marshall had fortified himself in his top-floor office, surrounded by a team of lawyers and PR advisors. They pressed him to release a statement. They implored him to recognize the reality, or at the very least, feign some concern. However, Marshall declined. Hubris was a toxin, and he had imbibed it thoroughly. In the lobby, the staff congregated around the screens. Some observed in astonishment, others filled with optimism, a handful burdened by shame. Leonard lingered silently at the periphery of the throng, gripping his badge rendered obsolete. Dana typed with fervor on her laptop, sending internal files to investigative journalists. Each fragment of proof revealed yet another fissure in the grand structure. Henry and Alara occupied adjacent seats in the worn break room. Silence enveloped them initially. Only the soft buzz of a vending machine fills the air, accompanied by the faint chatter of news anchors narrating their lives as though they were characters in a film. It was a moment I never imagined would arrive, Henry finally remarked. I didn't expect that either, Alara responded. That day all I wanted was to play the violin. However, do you know what struck me while I was in that room? Henry gazed at her. I was always more than simply my mother's daughter. I became her voice, as it was essential for someone to articulate her thoughts. He nodded deliberately, a swell of feeling building in his throat. Out of nowhere, a knock resonated through the corridor. It was resolute, incisive, nearly ritualistic. A cadre of federal agents entered the main atrium, clad in navy jackets adorned with gold lettering. Not a single word was exchanged with the staff. They headed directly to the elevator. No one made an effort to intervene. The whole company stood in awe, their breaths held as the doors shut behind them, ascending to the executive floor. 20 minutes later, Marshall Greystone emerged, his wrists bound in handcuffs. As soon as his face lit up on every screen throughout the building, an enthusiastic cheer broke out. Some applauded, others wept, but the majority remained in silent admiration. The figure who governed with quietude has now been rendered mute. Outside, the air buzzed with excitement as Marshall was ushered into a sleek black SUV, the cameras capturing every moment. Reporters called out inquiries, yet Alara remained silent in response. She stood on the front steps with Henry, observing the gates shut behind the man who believed he possessed it all. You ought to speak up, Henry murmured. They are in anticipation. Alara inhaled deeply and moved ahead. My mother dedicated her life to creating something truly beautiful, she said. Some attempted to conceal it, yet the truth will inevitably rise to the surface. It ascends regardless of the time it demands, even if it claims her daughter. In that instant, the focus shifted away from vengeance. It revolved around a force much greater: justice. Alara stood outside the Stratton Dynamics building, feeling as though the very ground had transformed beneath her. The sun blazed in the sky, throwing elongated shadows over the courtyard where staff and journalists had assembled. Yet amidst the turmoil, an unusual, nearly holy calm enveloped her. The silence that lingered was reminiscent of the calm after. It had a tempest, rich with a sense of wonder rather than void of sound. Yet within her a different tempest stirred. A sleek limousine glided to a stop at the curb. The windows gleamed with a darkness deeper than obsidian, causing the crowd to instinctively part. The identity of the occupant remained a mystery, yet the presence of the vehicle commanded an undeniable air of reverence. The driver emerged, imposing in his tailored suit, and swiftly pulled open the rear door. A woman emerged from the shadows. She stood tall, adorned in a sleek emerald coat that glimmered under the light. Her hair gleamed like silver, yet her stance was as strong as iron. Her gaze swept through the throng until it found Alara, and a gentle warmth filled her expression. It was Olivia Whitaker, the grandmother of Alara. Marin's mother, the silent matriarch, had endured years of sorrow, mourning the loss of her daughter and holding on to the belief that justice would remain elusive. "Alara," she whispered, her voice quivering. Alara pivoted. In an instant everything else vanished. They had never crossed paths, merely exchanged letters and relied on distant memories recounted by others. Yet in that fleeting moment, kinship, acknowledged kinship. "I held on to it all," Olivia murmured, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Each piece, each image, every message your mother penned. This day has been long anticipated, despite my doubts about its arrival." Alara grasped her hand, and a torrent of decades-old pain surged through their fingers, akin to an electric current. For the first time, she found herself surrounded by others. She stood with a sense of heritage. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping forward with purpose. He donned a sharp suit, yet his attitude was more modest than businesslike. Calvin Rourke presented himself as the acting head of the Department of Scientific Ethics, a newly established division formed in response to the Stratton scandal. He presented Alara with a curious inquiry. "What is this?" she inquired. He spoke of justice as a chance. Within the envelope lay a letter adorned with the signatures of several senators. A new initiative is set to be launched, the Whitaker Program, a federal project designed to fund, support and protect young inventors from marginalized communities. A national research center has been inaugurated, featuring Alara Whitaker as the leading figure on the advisory board. Her eyes brimmed with tears, not due to the proposal itself, but because of the significance it carried. Her mother's work would endure. It would remain untouched by the hands of thieves. It would ascend. That evening, Alara found herself on a serene stage within a modest community center, not far from the hotel where everything had first unfolded. With a graceful motion, she raised her violin, and the children watched in awe, their eyes sparkling with wonder. The lights dimmed and a silence fell. Then arrived the initial note. It began as delicate and tender, yet in mere moments it blossomed into something vibrant and expansive, enveloping the entire space. It transcended mere sound. It was a recollection. It was a reality. It was each stride her mother had made, every wrong endured, every triumph, every drop shed, and when she concluded, silence enveloped the room. They lingered in quietude, gasping, changed forever. A billboard illuminated the city skyline from above. A solitary image was presented, featuring a mother and daughter positioned closely together. The caption stated, "They attempted to erase her, yet her daughter redefined history."